market, but it feels like a buyer's market, or the data might show a buyer's market, but it feels like a seller's market. So what you want to know is just where to get all the information that will give you a good insight into where the market is, where the market's been, and where the market's going, and how to interpret all these things. So I do this for all of our sellers, all of our appointments. I always do full comprehensive market reports, in-depth analysis. So I get really into the numbers and the data, and that usually helps us with pricing. So once you really understand where the market is for a hyper local area, then it does help you in knowing what kind of flexibility you have with pricing when you're working with sellers. When you're working with buyers, this will give you a lot of insight into how you have to approach your negotiations. So either way, this is really good info. I put a link to the agenda that we're going to follow, and I'm just going to kind of take you guys down the method that I use whenever I'm analyzing a market, right? And so at least you guys will see. If you have questions as I'm going through, just throw them in the chat, and then we can talk about them as you put the comments in there. All right. So to start, right, whenever you're looking at market trends, or you're trying to get an idea of, like, how's the market in an area, obviously real estate is local. So even though Queens might have 9 months supply and it's favoring buyers, you can have a neighborhood that, or a certain property type in a certain neighborhood that has 4 months supply, and it's an extreme seller's market for that. So that's what you have to understand, is that real estate is local. So whatever's happening nationwide does not necessarily apply to what's happening countywide, and that does not necessarily reflect what's happening neighborhood by neighborhood wide, right? So anytime you're looking at market trends, you really want to focus down on whatever the local market and property type that you're looking at. So to start, let's say, for example, we're meeting with an owner that owns a two-family house in, let's say, Astoria 11105, right? So let's say Astoria 11105, we're meeting with a seller that owns a two-family house. So what we want to look at is where, before we even start pulling comps, we want to get an idea of where is the market for two-family homes in Astoria 11105, right? So the first thing we do look at closed sales. And I'm going to share my screen here now, so that hopefully if you're on a desktop, you'll be able to see, but I'll take you through this methodology of how I do it. So here, I'm going to take you to my screen, which obviously this is MLS, right? And you guys know what I'm looking at here, what I usually do when I start. So let's say it's a two-family Astoria 11105. I'll go into MLS, I'll click search, and then what I'll do is I'll go into search residential, right? Obviously, because it's a two-family, and then unavailable. Let me see if this thing.
So you probably want to slowly hover so you can
Yeah. So if you guys see, I'm clicking residential and unavailable because we're analyzing a two-family in Astoria, zip code 11105, right? So hyper local. That's what you guys got to know about market trends, is that the market for two-family homes in 11105 might be down, while the market for two-family homes in 11103 might be up. So everything hyper local. That's key whenever you're analyzing a market. So now we're looking here, and I'm going to type in 11105, right? And then number of families, I'm only looking for two-family homes, right? Because the owner we're going to meet with owns a two-family in Astoria 11105. So what we do here is I'm putting minimum 2, maximum 2 under number of families, because I only want to see two-family homes. As you guys know, we always go back 6 months, right? So under title date, if you see here in title date, you just throw in T minus 180, and that's going to take you back all two-family homes in 11105 that have closed in the last 6 months. We have 6 here, right? So what I usually do when I first start, I'm just trying to get an idea of where do most two-family houses sell. So here there's not that many, but you can see, 1.1 to 1.4, somewhere around that range. And then I don't know if you guys use this button right here, statistics, but when you're in MLS, whenever you pull comps and you get the list for the whole zip code or the whole neighborhood, it's good to click that statistics button and get an idea of your average sold price. So this lets just where most buyers are probably looking, the average price, where the biggest pool of buyers will be. And then you want to look at the average days on market. So this, if you look at the agenda, you'll see that it starts with closed sales, pulling up MLS closed sales, right? I always use zip code. So whenever I'm first starting to gauge a market, I start with the zip code. I don't start with the neighborhood. I start with the zip code. And then what I do is I pull up the closed sales on MLS for the exact property type. So let's say you want to look at, is it a buyer's market or seller's market? You want to make sure it's for the property type, because let's say in Astoria or any other neighborhood, the market in that neighborhood could be a seller's market for multifamily homes, and it can be a buyer's market for single family homes, right? So that's what you really want to get in at. Everything hyper local and specific to the property type. So what I'm doing here is for a 2-family home in Astoria 11105, the average sold price is about 1.2 million, and then average days on market is 111 days. What that tells you is generally on average how long are the properties taken to sell. Now, anything over, let's say 115 is, I would consider high. So if the days on market were over 115, 120 days, 130 days, 140 days, that's an area where those properties are taking longer than average. Usually in Queens, the average days on market for the whole county might be around like 116, 110. So whenever you go above that, it's longer than average. And let's say you had average days on market of 52 days, 72 days, that's showing you that in that area, properties are selling quicker than in other areas, right? So I'll stop here just in case anybody has any questions. Let me see if no questions. Okay. So first thing I do, I'm looking at closed sales for the whole entire zip code, right? For the same property type. And I get the average sale price, the average days on market. And I share this with my sellers too. I always let them know what the average sale price and average days on market is. Next thing you do is you want to get an idea of average sales per month, because one of the biggest ways to measure or to gauge the supply and demand of a neighborhood and for a specific property type is by calculating the month supply, right? That's how you measure the supply and demand. To calculate the month supply, you need to know the average number of homes selling every month, right? So the way you do that, you see here in Astoria 11105, we have 6 2-family houses that have sold in the last 6 months. So you divide 6 by 6 months, and it gives you an average of 1 sale per month. So that's your average number of 2-family homes in 11105 that are selling every month. So you have 1 selling every month. You're going to need that later when you calculate month supply. So now here, what I'll do before we start that, I just want to give you an idea of how it works, a few different zip codes, just so you can get a clear idea of how this would work. So let's say Corona. So I'm doing 11368 now. Okay, because that one was a little too easy. 6 divided by 6 is 1 per month. So this one now I'm doing is Corona, 11368, 2-family homes in the last 6 months. How many have sold? And there's been, you can see here at the top on the count, there's been 20 that have sold. Okay, so if I take my calculator and just do 20 divided by 6 months, it gives me an average of 3.3 sales per month. What you want to know that for is that's how quickly is the market absorbing the homes that are being listed. So in Corona, for 2-family homes, they're being absorbed at a rate of 3.3 sales per month. So if you were talking to a consumer, you would tell them there are about 3 to 4 two-family houses that are being sold every month, right? That's your average sales per month, and you'll need that later. And then again, use that statistics button, because this is where you see the average sold price, right? 1.182. And then the average days on market. So you can see average days on market, 64 days. That's very low. So that tells you that they're selling pretty quick over there. Okay. So now the next thing I do, that gives me a broad gauge, right? So I know average sale price for the area. I know average days on market. I know the average number of properties that are selling a month in that neighborhood for that property type. So the next thing I do, and if you guys aren't using this, you have to make sure you bookmark this website. So I use something called the market report generator, which this is through OneKey, right? So if you go, you see at the top, the URL is reports.onekeymlsny.com. And that'll give you access to the market report generator. I always use this for the next thing because I know the days on market are low, right? For the closed sales we just pulled up. I know that the average sale price was 1.182, right? But the next thing I want to see is what's the trend over the last year and over the last 3 years even, right? So in the market report generator, you just type in the zip code or the town, but I like to use zip codes. So I have 11368, and then we're looking at two-family homes only, right? So for residential, I'll go to only residential. And then if you see here, it actually lets you put how many families. So you can get a really hyper local market report designed by property type too. So if I put number of families 2, and then you leave the median price and leave that 12 months. So in the agenda that I created, the next thing we look at is what's the 12-month median price change. So for two-family homes in Corona, what's the last 12-month change in the median price? And you can see here that two-family homes in Corona, the median price is up 16.7%. And if you look here, so under one of the bars, it gives you January to December, so last 12 months, 2020, then the previous 12 months before that, and the previous 12 months before that. It gives you a 3-year market trend. And this tells you a lot. You know, this is really valuable when you're going on an appointment, or if you're working with a buyer. This tells you if the market is trending in your favor or out of your favor, right? And then if you look here on the right where it gives all the prices, you can really get a good idea of which way it's trending. And you can see Corona is trending up here. But not every area is the same, right? So if I go back to 11105 residential, two family, then you can see what's different here, right? So here it's also up 8.2%. But we've been running a lot of comps lately, and there's some neighborhoods where prices are down and some neighborhoods where prices are up. So that's under the first section of what I look at, right, is the closed sales for the whole zip code. I'm looking at the average price, the average days on market, the 12-month median price change. And then something else you can look at is the 3-month change. So if you're in a really volatile market where things are changing, just like us, our market has been changing drastically, you know, from quarter to quarter. So you can go down here, and instead of 12 months, you can select 3 months, and now it's going to give you a quarter by quarter, right? So for the last quarter, what's the trend for median price, and then the previous quarter, and so on. So that's something else I like to look at, is the median price for the last 12 months and for the last 3 months to see if anything is changing drastically there. So any questions here? This is the first section. This is the first thing I usually look at. If you guys want me to pull up a certain zip code or for a certain property type, let me know. I can do that too, because this is where it's good, I think, for you guys to just see, you know, what what I'm doing and how I go about, actually looking at the market trends. Everybody good here? So no questions so far, right?
Let's see some of those thumbs ups.
Yeah,
Yeah.
does that make sense? What I'm looking at first is I'm looking at closed sales for an
Nice.
area.
Nice. They're paying attention.
All right, so here we
George.
go. Let's do one real quick. Somebody said, can you quickly do mass bed single family, right? So what I'll do first to start, let's see in the report. Let's pull this up. So mass bed 11378. We're gonna do single family, and we're gonna do for 12 months.
Oh, you got to screen share again.
Oh, let me share my screen here.
Isn't George hair so nice? It always looks so fancy.
Okay, guys, so I'm in Maspeth single family homes for the last 12 months, and you can see here that the prices are up 3% in the last month. So, I mean, in the last 12 months. So this isn't month over month. This is actually taking a whole year, comparing it to the whole previous year. So in the whole last 12 months, the median home price in Maspeth is up 3%. Which if you think about it, that does make sense because the residential houses, Northwest Queens, Western Queens, they have been for single family a little bit flatter, so they're not appreciating at such a crazy rate. So 3% there for single family. And if you go to the last quarter, it'll give you 0.2% for the last quarter. So that's a little flat there, but that gives you an idea of how you can use this. So for the agents out there that are, if you're meeting with sellers, what we do, whenever we're meeting with a seller, I will share information. Let's say prices are down in a neighborhood, I will share that with an owner. But if I pull up something, in Corona, two family, and it shows that prices are up 16.7%, I don't really share that. Our motto, everybody's motto should be under promise, over deliver. So if the prices are going up in the area, that just gives me insight as to that I might have more flexibility with pricing because the prices are going up in the area. But it's not necessarily something I'm going to share with an owner, because if they see prices up 16.7%, they might want to price their house way over what they should be pricing it, right? So if the number is negative, then I usually share that with the owner because I want them to see that the market is trending downward. And so why you have to be a little bit more aggressive with your pricing. So that's just little tidbit there. So somebody said, yes. So co-op, 1 bedroom in Hollis in 11423.
Share your screen again.
Yeah, and we won't do, a whole bunch of these, but at least you guys get an idea of how you can utilize this tool. And it really does give you a lot of insight here, right? So
by the way, sorry to interrupt you, George, but by the way, for those of you that, if your screen looks very small as George's screen sharing, at the very top, you just hover over right next to where it says you are viewing George's screen. There's a section that says view options, and you can zoom ratio to make this screen larger on your end, so you can see a bit more clear about what he's showing you. Okay.
Yeah. So here now, 4 co-ops in 11423, 1 bedroom only. So you put them in and the max 1 bedrooms. In the last 12 months, the median price for a co-op in that zip code for a 1 bedroom is 8.1% up. So it's up 8.1% in the last 12 months. So that gives you, if you don't have that many co-ops in a zip code, it might skew the numbers, but 11423 does have some co-ops there.
And what you just did 6 months, you said?
No, this is for the last 12 months.
So
yeah.
what would you suggest for, so Edo, for example, what co-ops are very specific, right? Would you still recommend going back 1 year when looking at this data for a co-op?
Yeah, so what I do, guys, is when I'm looking at, I like to look at, when I pull the market report from the market report generator, I like to do 12 months because I want to see, our business has seasonality. So we have months where things are good, where there's peak season, there's down season. So I like to look at a whole year of data compared to the whole previous year, and that takes into account all the seasons. So that's why when I pull up market reports, I think that's always a good gauge when you look at the whole year, right? And then if you want to get something a little more recent, then you can do 3 months and it'll give you the last quarter, right? The last 3 months. But I like to do the last 12 months. And then you can also pull up in your MLS like we did in the beginning, right? Where you look at unavailable. So if I'm in MLS, I'm going to search, I'm doing condo co-op and unavailable only. And then you can see the average sale price. You can see the average days on market to see if they're selling quickly or taking a long time to sell, right? So any other questions or anything?
We'll do one more. College Point, 2 families, 11356.
Okay, let's see.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, so
Adele.
let's, so far, all the ones that we've gotten, they're up. So let's see, this is 1 family,
2 family.
2 family, College Point. So bookmark this site, guys. You guys are gonna, this, we use this all the time. And especially when we're meeting with sellers, we like to share market reports with them. So here I'm generating it, last 12 months, 2 families, College Point. And you can see here in the last 12 months, they're down 2.2%. Okay, so that's a good one that if I was going on an appointment, I might share that. And you can even see for the last, if you go back even November to October, it's also negative. So in the last 3 months, they've been starting to trend downward. So, that's definitely something you want to pay attention to. Okay, and then let's just do 3 months just to see what the last 3 months look like. And the last 3 months are down 2.2. So yeah, you can see here, if you were meeting with an owner of a 2 family in College Point, you want to be a little more conservative because it looks like the prices are actually, they're definitely down and they might be trending downward. So, that's something that you definitely want to keep in mind. So hopefully you guys are seeing how we use this tool, market report generator. Okay. The next thing, if you have questions, just throw them in there. The next thing we look at is where the market is, right? So when you look at closed sales, it's not necessarily telling you where the market is right now. It's telling you where the market was, where the market's been, right? So all those properties, they closed within the last 6 months, and all those properties were on the market maybe more than 6 months before that, right? So it's giving you insight into the market, but not necessarily exactly what's happening right now. So the next thing we look at is we try to get an idea, where's the market right now, right? And for that, you usually want to look at pending sales. Okay, so let's just take that last example, 2 families in College Point, right? So let's take that example. I'm gonna share my screen here again. Hopefully you guys are on your desktop because this is where it's really a lot easier if you're on a desktop here. So now I'm gonna take that same example, right? College Point 11356, and I'm gonna go into MLS, right? And I'm gonna go back again to search. And I'm gonna pull up the pending sales for that zip code. And what I wanna see is how many are under contract. And that usually will tell you if there's a lot or little, if things are actually selling at a faster pace or slower pace recently. So I go to residential unavailable. I'm gonna put in 11356. And then I'm gonna put in the number of families, 2 and 2. And what I wanna see here, these are under contract, right? So we wanna see now, we already looked at closed sales. Now we wanna see pending sales. What's happening with the under contract properties? So this is 2 family, and you see that there's 28. So that's definitely a lot of 2 family houses in College Point that are in contract. So that shows you something there. What I usually do is I'll look at, once I have the closed sales and I look at the average sale price for the closed 2 families, and I like to compare that to the average list price for the pending sales. And it just lets me know Is it down? Is it up? Is it about the same? So usually I'll compare whatever the average sold price was for the zip code. Then I like to look at the average list price for the pending sales, and it just kind of gives me a little bit of insight as to if it's up or down. I look at the days on market, so 61, and I compare the days on market for the pending sales comparing to the days on market for the closed sales. And that'll tell you also, are things picking up or are they getting worse? Are things taking longer or selling quicker, right? For the area. Because the market's changing every 3 months. Our market, especially right now, the market's changing, quarter to quarter. So you can do that, and that gives you an idea of where the market's going in terms of, is it slowing down or speeding up? The next thing I look at, so that's the median list price, the average days on market. And then again, in the market report generator, you can pull up pending sales too. So this lets you know if pending sales are up or down. And for pending sales, I really like to do just by 1 month. So if I go here, 11356, residential, 2-family homes, still median price, but report type, instead of sold properties, I do pending sales. And so now this is going to give me only pending sales, and I usually like to do by month. So I'll click 1 month, and now it tells me, are pending sales up or down, right? So this is month over month. And actually, you don't do price for this, you do transactions, because you want to know amount of units going into contract. So transactions, and you'll see here that this is year over year, but with the month. So in December 2020, 5 pending, the prior year 3, in November 6 and 5. So it looks like it's a little bit over last year, but not by a huge amount, but it's a little bit over, but that's good. That means that things are selling, and that's probably why you have 28 in contract right now. So at least you know that things are selling in the area. The prices are down a little bit, but the things are selling there, right? So this is all just getting you into, a full comprehensive look at a market by specific property type and for a specific zip code. So let me see. Any questions there? Is this making sense?
Who's confused?
Yeah, throw us a little thumbs up there. Throw me a thumbs up if you guys get it here. Thanks, Joseph.
Awesome, Jeffrey.
Awesome,
Linda,
Jeffrey. Okay,
Rafael.
cool.
Thank you.
So this is the kind of stuff we do, especially now. And we still have one section to go into here, but especially now where the market is changing rapidly. We had a big pause in our market last year. We had a short little flight to the suburbs. Then things rebounded at the end of the year. In the last quarter, sales picked up. Pending sales were up over 30%. So it seems like things started to come back. Now in the first quarter of the year, we don't really know what things are going to look like. But when you're meeting with a seller or a buyer, you really need to analyze these numbers so that you can actually tell people, where they stand in the market. So is the market in your favor or not in your favor? And again, real estate is local. So it will depend on the zip code, the area. It'll depend on the specific property type, right? So you want to look at all that stuff. And so, for example, 11435 is Jamaica and Briarwood. If you're doing Briarwood, you want to only do that section of Briarwood to get a really clear gauge on the market for that area. So
can I make one comment, George?
Yes.
So for example, just to give you an example, I said double examples, but you could be in
You're
one
muted,
area.
I think.
Oh,
no, you're good, right?
Oh, you can hear me,
Yeah.
right? So you can be in one area where you have a major intersection, but it's the same neighborhood but different zip codes. So that's why the zip code is really important, because it's like micro neighborhoods of Queens. And so we've seen it many times over the past 10 years. Like you can have one figure compared to the other just above you, and it's very different. And so the way that George is valuing, I mean, obviously this is very much part of converting business, because the more that you can understand the details of these figures, and you're able to present the same to an owner, and you have to make sure that when you're presenting it is comprehensive, an owner will be more willing to want to work with you, because obviously you're coming off as a professional and that you know what you're doing. You've taken the time to study and analyze this data. And even as we're doing now, going on these listing appointments, now we're just simply doing listing previews and then providing the analysis afterwards. And so that we used to do it where we would go on a listing appointment. George would do a lot of prep work up front, printing out papers, highlighting all these things. But now with COVID, you don't have a full blown presentation like we used to, because you're limiting time in people's homes. And so when you're providing the data that George is presenting to you here, you have to also be able to present this through email communications. And how are you doing it with the mindset that you're talking to an average Joe? We're in the business, and there's other people in this group here that maybe you are new agents, but even as seasoned agents, we have to remember you have to be able to present this information to the average Joe. So that way it's comprehensive, it's easy to absorb and understand, and that is part of conversion.
Yeah. And so if any questions, again, throw them in there. If you guys want to get some, different feedback or have any questions on the stuff we're covering. But this is kind of like if you're running comps, the only difference is that you're looking at the overall market and you're looking at how it's trending. So if prices are up, if prices are down, if average days on market is going up, if it's going down, right? So this is where you start to develop a good insight into where it's going. Yes?
Karul?
Karul?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem.
It's okay. It's good to hear a voice through here.
Yeah. Yes. If anybody has a question, just jump in there. So we looked at closed sales. We looked at pending sales. And now the last thing we look at to get a full view of the market is we look at active inventory, right? We're looking at inventory. So closed sales, pending sales, inventory. Now, when we look at inventory, the first thing we want to look at is how many properties are for sale, right? So I'm going to share my screen here so that we can start to get into the final observations for an area. So let's go now, and I'm going to go into, we're going into College Point. Let's just do the two-family example in College Point. So now in College Point, two-family homes, and I'm going to do the closed sales, because if you guys remember, we have to know the average number selling every month. So what I'm going to do here is I need to just find out how many two-family homes in College Point are selling every month. All right. And then from there, we're going to go in and we can calculate the month supply. So we have 25. Okay. So 25, we divide it by 6 months, and that gives us 4.2. So 4.2 houses are selling, 4.2 two-family houses in College Point are selling every month. So now when we look at inventory, we want to see how many are available. We know that 4.2 or 4 are selling every month. So we go into MLS, residential, available, and we're looking at for 11356, how many two-family homes are on the market right now. This is where you start to find out, is the market there favoring buyers or sellers? So this is where you find out. So now we're going to put, obviously, zip code 11356. We're going to do the number of families is going to be 2. So 2 and 2. And then we're going to see how many we have, right? So now we have 27 that are currently for sale. So this is how you calculate month supply for anyone who hasn't done it. So if you're calculating month supply based on the closed sales, then what you're doing is you're taking your 27 single family homes that are available and you're dividing it by the average number that are selling every month, which is 4.2, right? So you divide it by 4.2 and it gives you month supply of 6.4 months. Now, month supply over 6 months is said to favor buyers, which means a buyer's market. And month supply below 6 months is said to favor sellers. Now, in our experience, because we've seen places with month supply of 6 months, 3 months, 8 months, 12 months, right? Um, month supply of 6.4 months is really a balanced market. Anything between like 5 and 7 months is really a balanced market where supply is pretty much in line with demand. When you fall below 5 months supply, when you're at like 4, 3, 2 months supply, that's heavily favoring sellers. That means that, 5 houses a month are selling and there's only like 3 on the market, right? So demand is far outweighing supply. So when you get month supply that's below 5 months, then you know that the market is in favor of the seller, and you know that you probably have more flexibility in pricing. So even if you price it above what the comps are showing, chances are you're still going to get offers, and you might even sell it at that new higher price because the market, there's more demand than there is supply. On the flip side of that, if you see month supply of 8 months or more, then that's a market that really is favoring buyers. So if I see 6 or 7, I'm not freaking out. I'm not thinking that it's a buyer's market there. It really isn't. 5 to 7 is still like, it's just a balanced market. Things are still selling. Buyers are there. Sellers are selling. So supply and demand is pretty balanced. But when you get to 8, 9, 11, 14 months supply, now you're getting into really pronounced buyer's market. So 8 months, that's already a market that has more supply than demand. And when you get into 10, 12, 14, then you have to be really aggressive with pricing. And if the property isn't in really good condition, you have to price below market value to even get your property sold, because that means that there's a lot of competition in the market and not a lot of properties are selling every month.
May I add
Yes.
to that? And of course, once again, when you're speaking to sellers, you have to be able to explain this, because you're understanding, first of all, goals of an owner. And let's say, for example, we have extreme buyer's market, 9 months of supply, and they need to have sold their home, let's say by April, May, June. That means that they need to put their property on the market yesterday, because it's going to take time for them to even get their property under contract. You need to find your buyer. You have so much competition. So they need to be aware that now is the time to put the property in the market. They have no time to delay, especially when they're on a time limit. And obviously that's where consultations and understanding their goals is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the same time, for example, if it's a seller's market, which we've experienced for many years already, if you can imagine that you can price a bit higher, and there's a very good chance that you'll get a better offer amongst what the current values have shown from an appraisal's point of view. This is where also you have to discuss in the beginning about potential under appraisals, which means that you also have to discuss how to strategize for potential under appraisals or when offers come in, right,
Yes.
George?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So whenever you have so the conversations you're having, if you guys have to, no matter you're working with sellers or buyers, always calculate the month supply for the neighborhood and for the specific property type. That tells you a lot as to what kind of conversation you're going to have. So let's say the owner of the 2-family in College Point, where prices are down 2.2%, and then let's say month supply was 9.8 months. That conversation is letting them know that not only are prices down, but the market there's a lot of competition. So actually, even though the comps are showing one thing, depending on what's on the market, we might have to be more aggressive with pricing, because there's not that many that are selling and there's a lot that are on the market. So we might have to be more aggressive there. So you have to teach people why it is that you're saying this, right? Now, let's say prices are down 2.2% on the market report, but there's month supply of 4 months. There's no problem there, even though the prices might be going down, which you wouldn't really see that usually. But let's say you saw that, then you know that at least the supply and demand is in your favor. And so you can still price maybe around where the comps are or a little higher, because there's not a lot of competition. So you guys always have to know this. And if you're working with buyers and month supply is 11 months or it's high, then you know that you probably have a lot more leverage in negotiations because there's a lot of properties that are on the market and not a lot of them are selling. So same thing, whether buyer or seller, the month supply always gives you insight into what kind of conversation you need to have with your consumer so you set the right expectations.
So essentially meaning that last portion, which is the future, the past is closed sales, the present is under pending sales, and the
Mhm.
future is analyzing absorption rate. And so with that last analysis allows you to understand strategy. What is the best strategy of listing our suggested list price
Mhm.
to help you sell your property in the time you need to with your accomplishing your goals? Does
Yes.
everybody understand? Can y'all raise
Yeah, does this
thumbs
stuff
up?
make sense?
Is
So
everybody
somebody
following us?
said when calculating month supply, do you consider new construction units coming on the market? So, I mean, if they're on the market, I count them. But if they will be coming, I don't really count them because I don't know when they're going to hit the market. So if I'm calculating month supply right now, I just want to know at the current rate of sales, right? So at the current rate of how many properties are being absorbed by the market, how long would it take to sell all of the current inventory for sale? So I'm only taking into account what's on the market today, right? So anything coming, I can't really factor that in because I don't know how many would be coming. But if they're on the market, new construction is all part of competition. When it's available, whether it's new construction, fixer upper, brand new renovated, no matter what price range, everything that's for sale is competition, right? So the only main thing that we narrow down by is the property type because someone looking for a single family in a certain neighborhood may not necessarily be looking for a two family in that neighborhood. So you try to narrow it down by property type and that usually helps. So if you want to go even deeper into this, right? So we just did month supply for College Point two families and it came out to 6.4 months, right? So pretty much a balanced market. Now, let's say, and this is kind of going even deeper, but if you wanted to get it an even more recent feel for where month supply and where supply demand is, I'm going to share my screen here. What you could do is you could even go to unavailable, right? Go back to MLS, research unavailable, and we're going to do two families. And what we look at is we'll look at pending sales in the last 30 days. And that lets you know how is the last 30 days compared to the closed sales, right? So if we know based on the closed sales, there was an average of 4.2 two families that were selling every month. Now you go to the last 30 days and it'll give you an even more recent feel for how many properties were absorbed by the market. So let me see here, 11356. I'm going two family. And now I'm going to go to contract date because I want to see properties that are in contract or that went into contract in the last 30 days. And here you'll do just T minus 30. All right. You could even do 60 days here if you wanted to do last 60 days. But you can see here that there was five two families went into contract in the last 30 days. And the average based on the closed sales was 4.2. So we're right in line. I mean, it really feels balanced here because the month supply is balanced. The pending sales in the last 30 days is matching up pretty much with the closed sales. So you can get a good gauge here. If there was only one there, that would tell you something. That means the market might be changing as we speak there and demand is going down, right now in that neighborhood. But for what we see here, it looks like the demand is still steady for two family houses in that zip code. Any questions here? Any other questions before we jump into the next thing?
Is everybody awake?
Yeah, does all this make sense? I mean,
Thanks,
hopefully
Dwayne.
this is like we geek out with this stuff on QHT, but if you guys have any questions, just throw them in there.
Let's see those thumbs so we know you guys are all following. And you can also chime in if you wanted to say hello as well.
Yeah. So something else that we look at, right? Whenever you're looking at, where the market's going is also, of course, interest rates. You guys know mortgage rates drive a lot of the demand that we see in our market. And so if you start seeing mortgage rates tick up significantly, then you know that that may impact demand. And so for whatever neighborhood you're looking in, if it's with a seller or buyer, that just lets you know which way it's trending. So if mortgage rates shot up a half a point, then that's going to price some people out. In some areas, you lose a big pool of buyers. In some areas with a lot of FHA buyers, you might lose a big segment of your demand there. So you always just want to know where mortgage rates are and where they're expected to be, because that also gives you insight into where the market's going in the near future. And then also local economic conditions. So you want to know, it's not easily accessible, but knowing like the local unemployment rate, knowing local economic conditions here in Queens, how things are doing. So like I just read an article recently that showed that the unemployment rate in New York City right now is like 11.4% or something like that. And that's way higher than the 6.7% in the nation. So that means that we have to be paying attention to our local economy, because even though the nation might be getting their unemployment numbers down, New York City is still very high. And if that grows, I mean, I think it went down, but if that were to grow, or if it were to stay at that rate for a prolonged period of time, that eventually will have an impact on our local market too. It impacts rentals, it impacts market values, home buyers. So you want to always just know what's going on in the local economy and also in the national economy. All that stuff is good.
May I chime in, George?
Yeah.
So, and as George is mentioning to you, these are all those new conversations that have started to happen for us in terms of economy, really this past year with the pandemic. And so we're really having like very candid conversations with these owners. We're never trying to just, ABC always close you. It's just not our style. And the style is really just giving good content so that way the owners can make decisions. I mean, even this last year, we have some people, they're not sure what they want to do. And I had some conversation asking them, are you looking to stay in your home for the next 5 to 7 years or maybe longer than that? Or were you really looking to make your move within the next 1 to 2? If it's something sooner, this is when we're telling them maybe you should really consider sooner because of all these factors that are now involved cause of pandemic. And we actually worked with a few clients that made those decisions because they can't even envision themselves staying in the home for another 5, 7, 10 years or more. And so again, these are just those candid conversations that you have to bring to attention. Well, so the owner can think about this and make decisions that make sense for them. Your job is to present all the data, and then they make good decisions based on good information.
Yeah. And this is where for us, we always tell our team and even, anyone we talk to, this is the value of an agent, right? An expert agent. And this is why you guys have to study this, because no consumer has access to all this information, and they're not going to do all that research. So if you guys are doing all this research and these numbers and where the market is, if their prices are up or down, month supply, things like that, that's the value that you provide to a buyer or to a seller. And that's where you get to show your expertise and educate people. That makes people want to work with you, So definitely. So I got a comment here.
Raphael?
Yeah, guys, do you have websites that you can recommend that tracks local unemployment rates and also mortgage rates? So for mortgage rates, yes, there's I use on our website, we have a link that says today's rates, and I think it takes you to Bankrate, bankrate.com. So on Bankrate, you can follow the mortgage rates. And for unemployment, if you Google NYC unemployment rate, you should be able to find a website that helps you track it. But this is something very good that we're paying attention to, is we're paying attention to the local unemployment rate, because we have so many restaurants and entertainment industry and things like that's Queens and New York City specific. Other parts of the country are not dealing with that. So that's something that we have to pay attention to. We're also paying attention to the moratoriums on evictions and what ends up happening with evictions. And if we end up having like a wave of evictions at some point, that can definitely impact our market. Something else that I have here for you guys to know when you're trying to determine where a market's going and where it's at is current rental market trends. So you want to know, let's say like here in Astoria, we already know rental prices have been down and they've been going down. So if I'm selling or meeting with a multifamily owner, let's say a three, four, or five family owner in Astoria, those values are driven primarily by the rental rates. And so when you're not running your numbers, you have to educate your seller that the rental market is down, and as a result, that's impacting their value. Mm-hmm. So you want to know that stuff too. Have a good pulse on the rental rates in an area, especially when you're comping or valuing multifamily houses. Not necessarily two, but when you're going three units or more, rental rates will definitely factor into the value of the property. So it's good for you guys to gauge that. We use a website called Rentometer, so rentometer.com. And we pay for it's free, but you can pay for a pro version too. But that gives you pretty accurate rental rates there. And that helps for the rental market. So any other questions? We're like, we have right now probably 5 to 10 minutes left. We just finished up with the agenda, but if you guys have any questions or want me to run anything here, throw them in the chat or unmute yourself. And I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking. I'd love to even hear what you're seeing in the market right now, just starting the year, what you guys are seeing.
Anybody?
I
Yes.
noticed the apartments are staying on the market longer. The rentals in Astoria?
Yes, that's
that
correct.
also?
Yes, we have been
They've
seeing
been for
that.
like 3 months.
Yeah, and this is where, like when you guys are out in the field, this is when it's great for you to always be asking questions when you're meeting people. So we've actually spoken to some agents in the office that do rentals, and they were telling us, oh man, the rental market is like is super low right now. It's taken a long time to rent places where a one bedroom might have gone for 1,800. They were having trouble renting it even at 1,700. So
even 16.
3 bedrooms, 2 bed, like you could actually feel it. And then when you talk to people, you can get a sense too. Ask agents, ask owners, ask consumers what they're seeing. But yes, in Astoria, the rental market has been down, and we'll see. I'm anticipating that, the demand starts to come back. We had a big, flight to the suburbs or people going home, transplants that ended up moving back home. But I feel like to start the year, I think we're going to start getting some demand back, unless you see COVID cases just, skyrocket or something. But I think we should start to see things slowly come back, but we'll see here. So somebody said, really, I have an elderly couple who needs one bed in Eastern Queens. Really? Okay, but that just goes to show you that that real estate is local. Whereas here in Astoria, 1 bedroom rentals might be down. Over there in Eastern Queens, the rental market might be up, right? Mm-hmm. So that just kind of goes to show you that real estate is always local, guys. So, always dig deeper to find out what's happening in a local market.
Oh yeah, Eastern Queens. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and we actually just I ran all of the market reports for every single zip code in Queens to see where prices rose the most and where they went down the most, and where, like for co-ops, the prices rose the most in areas like Belrose, like Bell Harbor, like Eastern Queens. So you can see that, the prices were down in the more dense areas like Jackson Heights, like Sunnyside, Woodside. But then as you went east to areas with more space, then the prices are actually up year over year. So that kind of shows you that people were maybe if they lived in a building, wanted to buy an apartment, maybe they can't afford a house, or they just wanted to stay in an apartment, but maybe they didn't want to go to the dense areas and they went more towards the areas that have more space.
Any
Um,
other questions, guys? Ladies and gentlemen,
yes. Any other questions?
let's see some of those clapping hands or thumbs up if you got some good ahas from this class. Thank you, Rafael, Marlena, Linda, Del Garcia, Arcade, Marilyn, Karen.
It's,
Thank you. Oh,
What do we
Karul.
got?
Hello,
Karul.
Karul. Thank you,
it's
Joseph.
awesome. It's
Bye.
awesome class.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean,
Awesome, both of you.
thank
Yeah.
And mind you
Thank you.
guys, like, I mean, this guy, if I didn't have this guy, I'd probably be very confused and I'd have to really study everything over the years that he's taught even me as his business partner. But, imagine listing 40 to 60 properties a year. That's a lot of
Amazing.
experience. And so the data he shared with you has absolutely helped us to, as part of our conversions. So the more that you can really study this, and I know numbers don't come as easy to some as others, but man, I mean, what I've seen what this guy has done in educating homeowners, it's really so much value, and people really, really appreciate this data, So
Yeah, and what usually happens if you get really good at this, what happens is that when you suggest a price, we don't get a lot of objections to the prices we give. And even if we do, we test the price for 2 weeks and we drop it to our price, but a lot of times they just accept what we're telling them because they know that we're not just pulling numbers out of the air. Whatever value we're giving you, there was a lot of thought and research that went into it. And so number one, it makes you look more professional. It makes them see you as an expert. And then in terms of pricing, usually you shouldn't have as many objections because they know that you did a lot of research and you're not just pulling numbers out of the air. You're actually looking at what closed, what's pending, what's on the market, what's our competition, month supply, things like that.
all right.
We get
Okay.
the listing every time just with all that knowledge you're showing the seller.
Yeah, it helps. I mean, it helps for converting. You're right.
Well, I can also tell you, Linda, I mean, as I said before, we're not like ABC style. It's really, we're coming from an educational point of view because I think it's our responsibility to do that.
Mhm.
We've learned that over the years. And so, sometimes we go over this data and depending on our consultation with them and their true goals, if the numbers just don't make sense after going through comps and, everything that we do and understanding what they need to do, why, sometimes we just don't, we advise people it's not time for you to sell because this does not allow you to accomplish what you need to towards your next goal, which might be buying or relocating. Maybe they just need a certain figure.
Yeah.
And so, we're okay just to tell them, you know what, this is not the time for you. We can stay in touch with you either every month or every quarter until the numbers look more favorable. That helps you with your goals. And have we converted people when it takes 5 years to do so? Yes, we even just a recent 3 years in contact with an owner, and finally they made the move. So
Yeah. And there's a phrase called selling through educating. So that's what we do. We're
good
selling
phrase.
through educating, and that helps you convert people. And it's from an educational standpoint versus, getting people to sign right there. So it's a different approach. If you're into that, if you're into educating people, you like to teach people about the market where things are, then that's an approach that you can take too.
Sure.
Let's see. Very appreciative. Thank you for showing us. All right, awesome.
Any
Yeah.
other specific questions? If so, you got 1 minute countdown.
Yeah.
Let's see those high fives and thumbs up. And maybe we'll see all of your faces by Zoom next time.
And guys, make sure you're using that market report generator. Bookmark that site and use the statistics button in MLS so that you can pull those statistics. Usually we put all the month supply, we kind of calculate it and put it in a nice summary for people so that it makes sense. When you go through this with consumers, you have to really, dumb it down and try to explain it in layman's terms so that they understand what you're talking about. You can't just say month supply. You have to say that this is how we measure supply and demand. You have to say, the amount of inventory divided by the number that are selling each month, so they understand how you're coming up with this number and how that impacts them and your pricing, right? So if nobody else has any more questions, then feel free to email us, guys. If you have any questions directly, you can email me, George at queenshometeam.com. Abby is Abigail at queenshometeam.com. if you want to get any more information of how we do this stuff or any kind of things that we use.
All right, everyone.
All right, guys.
Peace.
Thanks for tuning
Thank
in.
you, Abby.
much.
Thank you, George.
Later,
God
guys.
bless
Wonderful.
everybody. Be
you.
safe out there.
Take care,
Peace.
guys.
Thanks, guys.